So, Doug, we have a return guest. She was on about a year ago or so, Tracy Flewelling from Maine.
I remember her. She was a great guest. And
Yeah.
you must have memorized your questions because you don't have a clipboard.
Well, I'm letting it rest. It's very tired.
It's very tired.
It's very tired.
Well,
Anyways, as you may recall, Tracy shared her journey of when her dear husband Neil was very sick from esophageal cancer, wrote a book about that experience and how she carried on as a widow in a woodworking business. And so we're going to catch up.
Get a update.
And she is my sister, but I am more normal than her. Just make sure everybody knows this.
Doug isn't more normal than
Doug's
anybody.
not more normal, yeah. Anyways, we're excited to have her back, Tracy Flewelling.
Welcome to the third chair, and we have our guest Tracy in Maine that we're Zooming with.
Tracy in Maine.
Tracy,
Our main gal, Tracy.
Here it rains. It's pathetic triangle rhyme. And then we have Peter.
Yo.
For some reason he does that.
I'm branding myself.
We're going to brand you? Okay, I'll go heat up the iron.
So Tracy has been on the show before. We talked about her book. How long ago was that, Tracy? That
The show was on about a year ago. Yeah, what?
about a year ago?
About a year ago.
And I heard that one of the big things that happened to you is you got a new truck.
I did. I got a girl truck.
A girl truck? How come it's a girl truck? Now, explain the difference between a girl truck and a boy
You look
truck.
underneath.
Oh my goodness. And what part is different?
Now, before I had Neil and I had a truck. It was an F-350. It was a dump truck. You know, it was big, and I loved it, but it was really big, and it started having rust issues, and I just thought maybe I won't try to learn how to weld this year. You know, maybe I'll save that till next year. Mm-hmm. So I ended up selling it, but I found I really miss having a truck because I do have to, you know, go get lumber and carry tables and everything. So sadly, my brother-in-law passed away, and his wife, when the dust sort of settled, she decided that she wanted to sell the truck. My brother-in-law's name is Cecil, and so Cecil's truck was for sale, and I decided to buy it. And it's just, you know, it's a 6-shift, and it's a Toyota Tacoma, and it's red, and, you know, it's cool. It's got these doors, and so I thought, this is like a girl truck, because, you know, it's more my size, and what am I going to name my girl truck? And I decided that her name was Cecil's truck.
Cecil's truck.
Well, wait a minute. Cecil was a boy, wasn't he?
Cecil was a boy.
I'm confused by this whole thing. And I have another question that's deeply... Why was Cecil driving a girl truck for years?
Well, I was like, oh, I hope Cecil never finds out that I said his truck was a girl truck.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been really great to have, and it's actually my other truck got about 14 miles to the gallon. And this one gets a little more like 25, and that makes a big difference.
That's a big difference.
Yeah.
Well, you know, a lot of people don't know how to drive a standard anymore. So, you know, that's quite something. Have you driven standards a long time?
Yeah, I haven't driven one in a long time, but that's what I learned on.
Did it come back to you naturally?
Huh?
Did it come back like right away, or did you have to work on it?
It did, yeah. The first car I ever had, my dad helped buy. Well, I mean, I paid for it, but he picked it out. And it's not I can't recommend, well, my father's passed away, but I can't recommend him highly as a let's go buy a car kind of guy, because it was a French car called a Simca. It was like a box. And it was so bad. It was such a terrible car.
I remember that thing.
You do remember it, don't
the Simca,
you?
yeah.
Yeah, you had to pump the clutch several times and then pull it out of gear, pump the clutch, put it into gear. I mean, it was so bad.
Wow,
And
you
so
really
it was
had
great
it.
training, because
I
I
can
learned by the
imagine
time I'd driven it for a while, I could like turn the corner and roll down the window and pump it, all of that. And so I think it's just like muscle memory or brain memory or
Well,
whatever.
this one
So,
must
yeah.
be easier than to pump it like several times and do it.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
man. Well, I was on vacation in Australia with my family, and we rented like a camper, and it was a standard. So I'm trying to adapt to having the wheel on the right side and shifting with my left hand rather than my right. Oh man, did I ride the clutch and do all kinds of
Did
things.
the car come back in one piece?
It came back in
That
one
was an
piece,
accomplishment.
but it was stressful. It was really stressful when I moved things. I was often wondering, is this going to go into reverse or third or what? I had.
Where in Australia?
We took a trip sort of. We went to Hobart and then Sydney and Melbourne and Cairns and Brisbane, and we saw Ayers Rock in the middle too. I think it's Angeles City.
Wow,
So
that's a big trip.
yeah, it was a 3-weeker, and then we went from there 3 weeks to New Zealand.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, New Zealand's. Australia's awesome, except I found the food so bland. It was so typically kind of British. Really, very little taste.
Except for fish and chips. Fish and chips.
Yeah, with enough malt vinegar.
Yeah, well, that's England too. I love the fish and chips. That's about it.
Yeah.
And then you went to Indian places.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there are great places otherwise, but
Yeah, I have a story about driving with a clutch. The Army, NTC, and where they have the training to fight the war, they get the oldest equipment. So they had these trucks that you drove with a clutch. But in the newer trucks, which the soldiers, these 18, 19-year-old soldiers, didn't have a clutch. So then they got the NTC, and they never drove a clutch before. So they had to spend the first 3 days learning how to drive their truck.
yeah.
Because, I mean, that's a big difference if you drove a standard all year
Huge
right.
difference. Yeah.
So,
And to not panic, like the other day, I was going somewhere in the truck and I stalled it, but it was, and I was at a light, and you would but I didn't panic. I was just like, put the clutch in, turn the key. But when you're not used to that, and the truck stalls and you're in the traffic, you kind of like your brain freezes, you freak out. So that would have been tough.
I panicked a lot of times when I drove.
Yeah.
It was just a bundle of nerves by the time I got anywhere.
Well, I was in the Canadian Reserve Army in our equivalent of a MASH unit, and we had our portable hospitals on these giant. They really were like giant dump trucks, and they were all standard as well. And that was scary because not only are you doing manual, but this is a big, heavy truck and really easy to gauge the distance wrong.
Yeah,
They were way better vehicles back when we had stick shift in the military. The newer stuff, garbage.
Yeah, but the problem is, can you find a soldier, an 18-year-old that would have any idea with a stick shift nowadays?
Yeah, exactly.
They just put that into the school. When I went in 1983, and you would you learn to drive a stick shift in your school.
Yeah.
It's harder to get a stick shift nowadays.
Yeah.
So back to your four-wheeling. Now you use this truck for carrying a lot of equipment, right? I mean, when you go do shows and stuff, can you tell us how that works out?
Well, last year was the first year that I have actually, like when I was with you guys last year, we announced that my website was going to be opened, and it was this year. And last year was the first year that I actually went and did what's known as an artisan show or a crafter show. And so what it is it's a show where you can come and sell your product, but they do what they call jurying your product. In other words, your product has to be judged by a team of people because they want to keep the caliber of the show at a certain level. So I wanted to go to this show, and so I had to have my product juried, and I did pass. But the reason it's a show here in Maine that's been going on for about 30 years, and my father-in-law has been at that show every single year, and he carves realistic birds, songbirds, and owls and falcons and stuff. And older gentlemen, and because of COVID, they didn't have the show for 2 years. So Mom and Dad didn't show for 2 years, and when it came time that the show was going to open up again, Dad's like, well, I haven't done it in a couple years, and I'm in my 80s, and I just don't know if I can. And I said, well, Dad, I'll come and help you. And he said,
we're going to finish this after a brief.
We're going to go to a break. Tracy.
Okay, good.
Welcome back to the third chair. We have our guest Tracy, all the way from Maine.
Were you about to say that the dog Mary? Because she is important.
The dog Mary's with her, and Mary caused a little stir during the break, but not very little. And then we have Peter, who causes a big stir
wherever he goes.
Wherever he is.
Yeah, I think, Tracy, I want you to carve me like me doing a yo kind of the little birds that you hold in your hands. What are they? The compassion birds?
You could sell that around October 31st.
So
what was that?
I said you could sell a carving of Peter around October 31st.
I could be a whole new line of product.
So Tracy, you were talking about your in-laws and doing this show in Maine.
Oh yeah, so we
woodworking?
as a family, we decided that we really wanted Dad to be able to show, and so we all pulled together. And I was just going to help out, but it turned out I talked to the show people, and they said, "Oh yes, you can have a booth next to him." So that was my first show ever. And it was very interesting, and it went very, very well. I basically sold out. But the really cool thing is, Dad got to do a show, and he really enjoyed it. And I'm so glad we did it, because he actually passed away October 24th.
Oh,
so
sorry.
We were able to give him that gift of doing that last show.
One last show.
Really, yeah, and because he had done the show for 30 years, he was really well known. He had a lot of customers that came frequently. So I'm gonna now I'm in. It's a little bit hard to get into that show, but because of COVID and because of my father-in-law, I got in, and so I talked to him this year, and I said, "Oh yeah, you can come back." So, but it's about 3 hours away, so you have to load up your tables, load up all your product and all your display and everything, and so the truck will be really handy to load all that up, stick the dog in the back, and drive north. And it's a 2-day show, and they have about 5,000 people come through that show in those 2 days.
So plenty of customers to look at your stuff and everything.
Yeah.
Oh, neat. Peter bit me earlier. I won the bet. He said there weren't 5,000 people in the whole state of Maine. So
that's North Dakota. There's only like 6,
and they're all named Bozeski.
So you were telling us earlier the nearest grocery store is like 45 minutes away or something like that.
Well, not my grocery store. There is a grocery store that's about 15 minutes down the road, but Walmart, Lowe's, Home Depot,
and you need supplies.
Like sort of big box type store. Yeah, it's 40 minutes. So if you're gonna go to you don't just zip down to Walmart to get a package of gum. you have, you plan it out.
So you plan to do these 3 stores all at once when you go?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And you're talking about something that takes you like most of the day or something because you do other things?
Well, I have a customer down there that I do gardening for that, Neil and I used to do gardening for, and I continue to do gardening for her. So I usually just make a day of it, go down, do her gardening, hit all the stores, go to the grocery store and come home. And yeah, it's a half a day. It might, depends on what kind of gardening I have to do, but yeah.
So how often do you do this?
Maybe once a month.
Oh,
Maybe,
okay.
Yeah, not so often. Yeah. You just plan ahead. And really, when COVID started, I really got in the habit of, because it was just such a pain in the neck to go and do everything. I just got in the habit of just like going and, buying for a month. Other than perishables, you can do it.
I live kind of almost like in a suburb of Colorado Springs, and I also like to do 2 things when I come to make it worthwhile.
Yeah.
I'm going to do this and this. I'm going to add that to that.
It's a different lifestyle, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, one of those things is to visit Peter.
Yeah, it's usually number 1 on my list.
Well, I'm glad we got that out of the way.
And then one last question on trucks. Do you ever do you do 4-wheeling or anything like that? Cross streams, climb mountains with this truck?
This is not a 4-wheel drive, this particular truck. So I've had to rein it in. I've had to rein my scrappiness in because it's just not it's not good for it. So no, I try to stick to the main road.
Is it good in the snow though?
No, it's terrible in the snow. And actually,
so
my car is too. I'm like, what was I thinking? Neither of them. But because I'm self-employed and my shop is on my property, I don't have to go out in the snow. And also because I've been going down to Florida for about 6 or 8 weeks each winter. So it's not been a problem. Yeah, just stay put.
So you don't have to call the boss, which is Mary, and ask for a day off? She'd say yes every day.
She's the boss.
She says, Mary says,
promoted. She's promoted to shop supervisor, and she's doing such a good job. I had to give her a bump in her cookie pay.
Mary probably's only big requirement is you rub her tummy like 10 minutes every day, right?
Pretty much, and give her a cookie. That's about it.
Well, that's about all I need as well. So Tracy, we're going to
we are not doing that for you in the studio.
That's why I got. He's number 1 on my visitor list. So
so we're going to transition, talk about a little bit of some spiritual ideas, and I just wanted to remind people watching that you were on the show a couple years ago. You wrote a book that outlined your journey with your now deceased husband Neil as you went through the treatment. Was it esophageal cancer that he had, all the way to the end? And then on the show, you'd also talked about the challenges and the obstacles living as a widow, and even some of the outreach to other widows that you had done. And so this topic sort of dovetails with that, and you brought up the idea to talk about, and quote me if tell me if I'm saying this wrong, but praying to have God say yes to your prayer. Is that sort of what you're saying? Tell us about that.
Well, I have a story that kind of made me realize that. So Mary and I drove. Well, actually, I did most of the driving. I only let her drive on the back roads. We drove
the dog.
It took 5 days. And
she's a big dog, so she can reach the steering wheel and the pedals, right?
Well, I do the pedals. She does the steering wheel.
Okay.
So she can, yeah. So anyway, I ended up, something weird was going on with my car. My car is like a push button start, and it's got the little key fob,
Yeah.
And I don't know, the key fob was acting kind of funky. But when you drive for 5 days with a dog, you figure it out. You figure out how to make it work. So what we would do, I would stop. I would get out. I'd take Mary out. Let her go to the bathroom. Then I would put her in the car. I'd give her some water. I'd give her a cookie. Then I'd close the door and I'd walk around and I'd get in and we'd go on our way. And I was like in the middle of nowhere at a little gas station in North Carolina, and I did that. And when I shut the door with Mary in the car, I heard this funny little click. And when I walked around to the other side, the door was locked. So the windows are up. My dog, who's on prednisone, which means she's thirsty and has to pee a lot, is locked in the car. And everything I own, including my winter coat, my phone, everything is in the car. And I was kind of freaked out. And so I was like, God, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? You know, and so I went into the gas station, and it was pretty hilarious, actually, because I went up to the counter, and there was a checkout girl, and I said, I got a problem. And she said, what's the matter? And I said, I locked my keys in the car, and my dog's in the car. And she said, oh, don't worry, Ronnie, come here. And this guy came over, and he took this bag off the wall, which was all the different ways you break into a car. I am not kidding. And so he took his little bag, and we went out, and it took quite a while. He had like a little plastic wedge that he pushed in the door, and this little, I mean, it was just amazing. And this other guy drove up, and he said, oh, when I break into cars, this is what I do. I was
We're going to continue that in a moment.
Yeah, hold that thought, Tracy. I like this story. We need to go to a break. Real people, real stories, real life. We're looking for guests. We're looking for you here on the third chair. I'm Peter, that's Doug, and how many different ways can we have guests?
Oh, at least 3. We can have them here in the studio in Colorado Springs. We've had guests all the way from LA on Zoom, and we have gone on location, and we got our 3rd one already in the planning phase.
Awesome. Send us an email and we'll get you on the show. Welcome back to the third chair. I'm Peter, that's Doug. We're with Tracy live from Maine, although this is going to be put up on YouTube later. Tracy was just sharing the story of her dog being locked in cold weather inside her truck, and apparently a man who had a lot of experience breaking in was assisting her. So finish that story, please.
Okay, so, and this refers back to prayer. So, because it was 40 minutes, and I didn't have my phone, I couldn't call AAA, I couldn't, I'm just standing there, I realized that I was standing there just as tense as could be, and I was praying in every way I could to make God say yes to me. That's what I was up to. I was standing there just trying to figure out, how am I going to make God say yes? And I think, realized that, I was like, I'm not doing anybody any good. And so I just kind of relaxed and said, okay, I'm not in charge here, God. We got a problem. I'm going to let you sort it out.
But you had two guys who knew how to steal cars.
Yeah, and it was very interesting that it was probably another 10, 15 minutes when the guys finally they actually got the door like cracked far enough to get the little metal thing in, and they actually had I'm just searching for words, the door handle, they had the door handle pulled out, and the door wouldn't open. So that, there's obviously something electronic that was a problem. And then the guy who had a lot of experience stealing cars said, or not stealing, breaking into cars. That's what he said. I don't know.
The chop shop was behind the building?
But anyway, he had the thought to take that piece of wire and press the car start button and then roll the window down. And it worked. But it was just such an interesting moment for me to realize what I was up to. I was like, I'm going to make God say yes. And it was it was startling, and it began this thought process in me of why do I pray? What am I up to? What do I think about that? And what is going on there? And so it was really interesting.
Well, one of the things that reminds me of is sometimes when God answers a prayer, it's with the most interesting people that you would never predict helping. Yeah, I remember a few years ago we were going through some tough financial times, and I had my 4 kids in my SUV, and I'd forgotten my wallet. I had like $1 in pennies. I was totally out of gas. I was really feeling dejected and desperate, and kind of feeling like a failure as a father. And I was at this gas station, and I was walking in to humbly present my pennies to get $1 worth of gas that would not take me very far. And this young kid with more tattoos and facial metal that I've ever seen in my life, that was driving a motorcycle, he walks up to me, hands me $10, and says, I think you need this, and walks off. And it's interesting how those kinds of things happen in ways that blow our mind. You might think, some pastor that heard God was driving down the highway and would pull in and do something, and it seems like it's not that way a lot.
Yeah, and I think it's good. I think it makes us more real.
Yeah.
More. I don't know if that makes sense. Like, more real, honest people when those kind of things happen to us.
Yeah.
Those 2 guys, that tall, skinny guy and the short guy. They were not the people that I would just walk down the street and say they're going to help me, but they were a huge help. And I don't know. I just felt like it was just a really, really revealing about me, but in a good way. Like, I was like, okay. That's not, I don't want to just be. I say that my favorite days are the days when Tracy shows up without her agenda.
Uh-huh.
Those are my days. When I don't have an agenda, when I just want to walk through the day, see what God has for me, see, what life I can impact or help or touch, but not with an agenda, not with a plan. And there's not a lot of those days, unfortunately.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Now that you learned the skill of breaking in, have you been used it anywhere?
No, I try really hard not to. I have a new plan.
We don't want to incriminate her if there's anything that has happened.
Well, maybe she'll add that to her resume. But
I wonder why people steal a lot of cars out east, because, especially southeast, because I can understand here because we're not super far from the border, and I know.
Yeah, there's a lot.
I spent some time in El Paso, and they used to have a top 10 in the paper every Saturday.
Yeah,
the cars that were stolen.
Well, what I found out happens here that's really interesting is people will rent a U-Haul truck and drive it straight to Mexico because to sell it or whatever, and apparently it's a lucrative business. Especially if you can get someone else to rent it for you, then you're,
don't rent a U-Haul truck for anybody.
You might do that for a family member, but I've seen ads on like Craigslist where I'm desperate. Can you help me?
Some family members.
Yeah, some family members. Yeah, but it's also interesting. It's like the whole idea of sort of expecting God to answer a prayer. He says like, give us this day our daily bread. But I don't picture God there saying, okay, you pray for me to give you your daily bread and I'll think about it. I'm glad you're praying, but maybe I will, maybe I won't. It's like, no bread for you today. I think part of that depends also on whether we're praying for needs during times of, especially times of desperation, as opposed to, I need that new Dodge or Ford F-350 truck. God, I can serve you with that brand new truck.
And sometimes you do.
Well, I guess I have come to think of prayer. I don't. In Christian circles, you'll often hear people say, "Oh, I should pray more. I think I need to pray more." I don't think that prayer is an obligation. I think it's a privilege. I mean, prayer is just talking to God. It's not like something we should be checking off on our list. And sometimes I think, especially if I'm praying for something like someone really in need, or maybe the persecuted church, or the starving children. I think I'm talking to God about something that really matters to Him.
Yeah.
That He really cares about. I'm having a conversation with the God of the universe about something that matters to Him, and it just has changed me from feeling like, oh, I need to, like should pray every day, or it's just conversation.
Yeah, and for me, it's also I've found over the last few years. There's an honesty. I mean, if I'm frustrated and angry and have been waiting for things for a long, long, long time, and it's been hard, I don't sugarcoat it. I just, when I pray, it's like, God, what the heck? I'm really hurting, and this has been a long, painful season of my life, and I'm not doing well, and I'm getting impatient. I have a lot of prayers like that, sort of more of the lamentation prayers of the psalm kind of a thing.
And I think God's man enough to take it, so to speak. I mean, I think God's big to take. I think He'd prefer our honesty, really.
Yeah, I do too.
These and thous, and what's that saying? Too holy for your own good, or whatever.
Yeah, too spiritual to be no earthly good, or something. Yeah. Yeah. Well, we're going to hold that thought, and when we come back, I'm going to ask you one more question about your thoughts on prayer. Welcome back to the third chair. Peter here, Doug here. Tracy Flewelling in Maine has joined us, armed with her side pet, Mary the dog, for encouragement, and I know Mary's trying to get a cookie. So
is Peter.
Yeah,
I
always.
think she's taking a nap, which is a good idea.
Well, when she wakes up, she'll be ready for that cookie.
And Peter might be napping in the show, too.
It's happened before.
Well, I tell you, we filmed not long ago, and the second episode, Peter, I know, wanted to take a nap.
Oh, boy, we filmed, not too long ago, and I was tired. I was yawning a little bit. So we were talking about prayer, and I wanted to get your thought on this. One of the things that I find frustrating about Scripture and prayer is that God does say a lot of times, yes, I'm going to answer your prayer, but we never get the fine print. Like, that'll be a yes in 20 years, kind of a thing. Do you ever struggle with that, or wrestle with that, or think about that?
Yeah, I do. And I have to say, and this kind of goes back to my favorite days are the days that Tracy shows up without her agenda. I like it when I'm able to be in a place where I can say, because sometimes I'll be, I run my woodworking shop, which was Neil's woodworking shop, and like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what the heck I'm doing. Like I told my sister-in-law, I don't know stuff. I just know how to find out stuff. Mm-hmm. So I might be at my CNC router and think, oh man, what am I going to do if? And I love the days when I say, well, I guess you'll show me, God. And I'm just content to wait for that. But we're emotional creatures. I mean, God made us with emotions, and emotions they get in the way of just praying and waiting contentedly. I think it's tough. The pastor of my church waited 20 years to be a pastor.
Yeah.
20 years.
See, that's tough.
And he's in his 70s. He's like, I'm not retiring. It took 20 years to get here. He's been there for 20 years. But,
right.
You're right. It is really hard to. It's like God doesn't talk out loud very often, so we have to kind of. So I love it when I'm able to say, "Okay, God, I have told you my problem, and now I'm going to work on other stuff until you answer that." But it's tough.
Especially.
I kind of blame Jonah.
Yeah.
Jonah always said, God, I can't do that. God.
Yeah, God, I can't do that.
As though he's talking to these people out loud.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But sometimes when things take a long time, we tend to start, do I just not have enough faith? And sometimes that is an issue. Did I cheat a little bit on my taxes? Is this,
But sometimes God wants you to wait because He doesn't think you're ready.
Well, that's just it. That's just it. But it'd be one thing to be told, in 13 years I'm going to give you that because that's how long it's going to take to train you. But we don't. It's like, I'm going to do that for you. Just carry on, and sometimes you're wondering, like, what am I supposed to do? What does this mean?
After 20 years, when he finally became a pastor, he probably was more appreciative than if God told him, on June 1st, 1999, you're going to be a pastor. And then he would be just expecting it. But when he got it on June 1st, 1999, it was probably one of the 5 most exciting times in his life.
Oh, I agree, but very few of us go through a time that long before prayer is answered. We're all pretty impatient, and we consider if it takes 2 years a long time. And
2 years is a long time.
Yeah, and 14 years. I mean, I just had a huge major breakthrough in my life that took 14 years, and
you
literally
worked hard for that, though.
Yeah, but God took me right out to the very edge of, I don't believe you, I don't trust you anymore, as far as I could go. Without like giving up, and I didn't, and then the breakthrough came, and that in itself was learning. But I don't wish it on people.
Right.
for
it's hard.
It's hard.
Very hard. Yeah. And it's that. The daily slog is what's hard. It's easy to say. I mean, there's people say God says yes, no, or wait. And He does. He says yes, no, or wait. But when you're in the wait, you don't, And sometimes I'll say, God, what are you up to? And then I'll say, actually, I don't really want to know. And the reason is, because if I had known what was going to happen to Neil and what, what I was going to go through and what these 5 years were going to be like, it would have killed me
totally.
to know it. I'd rather just walk those days with him. But that's more of the, that's like what's coming down the pike. I don't really want to know. But when you're asking God to do something in your life and your intention as well, and you don't get an answer, you're right. It's tough. And it's that day after day after day, no change. It can wear you down. Like you say, take you right to the edge.
Of course, he told Jesus, you're going to die.
Yeah.
Jesus knew.
He knew.
And I don't think that made it easy on Jesus.
No, I don't think so either. It's more.
He was praying,
Yeah. Well, and Peter, you said something to me when we were talking pre-production about talking back and forth. You said something that rang really true with me that might apply to your particular situation. You said to me, "Yeah, we've chewed some of the same dirt."
Yeah.
And I love that saying. And I just thought about you and your life, and I thought, Peter knows. He knows that long slog and sticking it out. And who knows who you are going to run into who's in that kind of situation that you've watched that and you're getting to this breakthrough. You never know. I'm not saying
I agree. I tend to think we're set up by God to help other people that have experienced what we have.
Yeah, and I love that saying. It was a very real, personal. Yep, we've both had some hard times, and how that helps someone else, I don't know.
And in all fairness, I stole that line from a Clint Eastwood movie, Heartbreak Ridge.
Oh, really?
I did, yeah. Just so you know.
$5.
Well, I'm telling you, you have been given credit to several people in Maine. You have been given credit for that line, because I have been talking to people.
Until they
have you?
Until they watch the film and they're going to go, wait a minute, I heard that somewhere before.
Yeah, but I love that line.
But a good line should be borrowed and used.
Yeah.
Actually, when I come out there, we'll watch that film with all those people so they go, oh, wait.
Yeah.
There it is. This is the big moment.
Heartbreak Ridge, it's an interesting movie to watch. It's kind of a war movie. It's well acted and it's got some great writing and some good humor. It's worth a watch. A little tiny bit of swearing, but not bad. Yeah. Well, we are going to take a break here, and then when we're coming back, Doug is going to
ask you what your favorite movie is, since we just talked about movies. So you can think about it, or if you have a set of movies,
you got 30 seconds or so to think about that, and we'll be right back. Hi, I'm Peter from Pikes Peak Recovery Coaching, and as you know, I do help people with drug and alcohol recovery issues. I love to help people get better, but I also offer a variety of other services, including regular life coaching services. I've helped several people write and finish a book. I've helped a doctor that was in medical school graduate and then get into a residency. And I also actually have quite a background in mathematics, and I do some math tutoring for the GED as well as the ASVAB for those that are thinking about a career in the military. So my contact information is on the screen. Please send me an email or a text, and we can talk about some of these services and how I can help. That's Peter Grigg at Pikes Peak Recovery Coaching.
Welcome to the third chair. Peter's still here. And Tracy's still thinking because we asked her what her favorite movie is before the break. And we're going to see if she's been able to pick one.
Well, I have a lot of favorite movies, but I got to tell you, the one that came to mind is Here Comes the Boom.
Here comes
Here
the
comes
boom.
the boom. Never heard of it.
I was like, here comes the bride.
Here comes the bride.
So what is this? Here comes
It's
the
got
boom.
Peter Fonda and Kevin. I can't think of his last name right now, but
Yeah.
he was also
Does a
in
lot of
that
the
hit.
stuff with Adam Sandler. Kevin,
Adam Sandler, Kevin.
right, he
Anyway,
does. Yeah, I'll look him up.
he does. He's trying to save someone's job at the school, and so he does not wrestling. What is that? MMA. Yeah, MMA wrestling, and it is such.
Oh, where they box and kick
Is it
and
with
kick.
Kevin James? Is it Kevin James?
Yes, Kevin James. Yes.
Yeah. I've seen that.
Oh, good.
It's hysterical.
Kick
It is
and punch.
hysterical, but it's a movie of victory. You know, at the very end when he says, "I don't think I can do this," and Henry Fonda does that speech about what are we supposed to do as teachers? Inspire. Look at those kids, you've inspired them. I mean, it's just makes you want to do something. It's a good movie. So that's my current favorite.
That
Nice.
sounds pretty good.
Yeah.
I'll look it up.
Kevin James actually did learn some mixed martial arts in real life, and so
That's
it
what I
wasn't a
heard.
stretch for him to do some of that acting.
They said he was really courageous. You know, he really did a great job in it all. So, what are your favorite movies?
Go ahead, Doug.
The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Clint Eastwood.
Wow.
A lot of interesting things
Wait,
in that
that's
movie.
us. That's
I
the
kinda-
three of us.
Go ahead, I'm the good, huh?
I'm the ugly.
Well, all we know what the producer is, but we all kind of thought that up here on the stage.
Yeah. Yeah.
I saw a movie that was kind of similar by the same director this weekend, Once Upon a Time in the West.
Oh, I haven't seen that yet. Yeah.
It's kind of similar because it has a lot of it was another spaghetti western, but this one had Henry Fonda as a bad guy and Charles Bronson as the good guy.
Yeah, there's a number of movies depending on I think one of the greatest movies ever made is Sleepless in Seattle. I don't know, have you ever seen
We'll be
that?
looking that out. Coming
No, that's
discussion.
my
you know.
brother's favorite movie.
Yeah, it sure is. We were talking about that. Yeah.
Favorite.
Actually, I have several favorite movies, but one of them is a movie called Enter the Dragon. It starred Bruce Lee, and Bruce Lee was a very famous
That was probably his most
kung
famous
fu.
movie.
Yeah, probably the most famous kung fu artist. He really was the grandfather of modern MMA. But he also was an actor in Hong Kong, and was a big visionary.
He was Kato on the Green Hornet.
He was Kato on the Green Hornet, but
That was the only reason to watch the show.
But he decided that he was going to make a movie that made him $10 million, and he wrote and he acted in Enter the Dragon, and Warner Brothers did it with him. And it's just, if you like martial arts, it's a great martial art type movie. It's got kind of a spy theme to it as well. But if you want to laugh, there's a series of spaghetti westerns that were made in Italy called like My Name Is Nobody.
My Name is Trinity.
My Name is Trinity. There's two or three of them. They're just hysterical. And they were done as spoofs when westerns were popular in the 1970s. They were done almost something that a Weird
Isn't he
Al
in a
would do.
movie? One of them have Henry Fonda in it.
Very well could, yeah.
Yeah, and then he was in this movie yesterday, which was totally serious.
Henry Fonda is a really interesting actor because he
is.
I mean, he's very talented, but he, I've heard him on interviews talk about he has horrible stage fright. And
Really?
even after many years acting, sometimes he'd be so nervous he'd be throwing up in his dressing room. Yeah.
So,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
so if somebody wants to get in contact with you, how would they do it? do it buy your furniture and your
I have a
wood
website
products?
now. It's up and running, and hopefully it will possibly be put on the screen. It's Tracy's Tiny Tables, and you can contact me there. That's my product, a little bit of my story, what my policies are about shipping and everything, and pictures of my products. So that would be the best way. Is just www.tracystinytables, all one word, .com, I think. Anyway.
We'll get it right on the screen.
Yeah.
Is that segment 5?
Huh?
Is that
Yeah,
segment 5?
that's
That's segment 5. That's why Doug's pointing at me. Anyways, thanks for being here. You're going to be here for another episode. We are so excited.
We probably could get 3 more episodes of this.
Anyways, please like, share, subscribe, and hit the notification bell icon so you know when we've uploaded another episode. Good night.